Hi, welcome to Collaborating with Other Writers for Cross Promotion. My name is Meg Eden Kuyatt. I'm a creative writing instructor and the author of novels like Post High School Reality Quest, poetry collections like Drowning in the Floating World, and kidlit books like Good Different. In my experience, I've worked with small and large presses, and in all of those experiences, I've been expected to actively promote my book. There is a lot you can do with promotion. It can feel overwhelming and can easily become its own full-time job. One time I made a list for my students and myself of all the different things you can do in a timeline, and I felt like I was making a wedding preparation list. It was just pages and pages, and I had some students going, what do I do? So this process can be a lot. It can also be lonely and discouraging. There's excitement with having a book come out, but there's also so much you can't control and all sorts of unexpected frustrations that authors don't often talk about. So because of this, I've learned to be strategic. Part of my promotion strategy is that I've started doing more collaboration with other authors. So why? Why do I do that? Why collaborate? Well, first off, it's more fun, especially when you're with book friends. You're doing your work, but you're having a good time at the same time being with people you enjoy. Or maybe people you'd like to know better. Maybe you collaborate with somebody that you admire their work, but you don't know them super well. And this is an opportunity to have fun with them and get to know them better. Collaboration is also a great bang for your buck. Promotion costs can really rack up quickly. So when you promote together, you can split costs for things like travel or table, maybe an ad. Another great reason to collaborate together is that it doubles your force for advertising. So if you're doing a panel with 4 people, then you've got 4 people utilizing their audiences and inviting people in their network. So instead of it just being you promoting an event and promoting it to your network, you're promoting to all these other audiences that might have not otherwise heard about your work. Another reason to promote is because it's easier to brag on someone else's book. I've heard a lot of authors say that they hate the marketing aspect. They feel so awkward pitching their books and talking about their books. But when I've suggested, well, what if you talk about somebody else's book? They say, oh, that's so much easier. And also, it actually is more effective sometimes when you've got authors hyping each other's books. That hype sells. People like hearing you gush about someone else's book instead of just hearing you talk about your own book. And I'll give some examples about what that looks like later. Finally, collaboration is so great because you can maximize the strengths that each person brings to the table, as well as their connections. So there's a panel idea that a few friends and I had. And so we had maybe one specific place we were thinking about sending it at first, but then we also thought, where else can we send this? And somebody who said, oh, I have connections with this conference, this regional conference, or I have connections with these bookstores. And so we were able to really send this thing multiple places because of all the different connections we had. And there might be other strengths that you have. So, I think of my strengths as being good at emailing people, checking in about things, taking that initiative step. And then somebody else, maybe they have a really great skill at writing up a panel proposal or maybe even a grant proposal or something like that. Who knows? There's a lot of different strengths that we all have. And when you put them all together in a room, you can do a lot more work more effectively for each other's books. So, okay, you want to promote, you want to collaborate. How do you find people to collaborate with? So the first thing I always recommend is to engage with your local community. Those are some of your best advocates. So get to know your local writing scene in your genre and even beyond. Go to local writing conferences, open mics and events, join local writing chapters, talk to people, do some research online. This is just such a great way to get to know your local scene and get plugged in. That's going to be one of the best things you have in your corner. Another thing you can do is just send out a call, see who responds and what ideas they have. So when I had Good Different coming out, I just made a Google form and I said, anybody want to review this book? Anybody want to collaborate on a panel? Anybody want to do a school visit? Fill out this form and let me know. And there were so many people that, maybe I didn't know, but were following me online or something like that, that reached out, and it led to some really great opportunities that might have not happened otherwise if I hadn't just sent out that call post. Another really great resource for connecting with other authors is a debut group. So a debut group is a group of authors who are all having their first book, usually first book, but it might be first in a specific age category or genre, coming out in the same year. So for Good Different, I was in the 2023 debuts. I was also in a subgroup for middle grade writers called MG and 2-3. So there can be multiple kinds of debut groups. There can be these smaller ones, these larger ones. They're a great way to connect with people that have this common ground. You've got books coming out at the same time. You're all wanting to promote your books. There's a lot of great opportunities for collaboration there. Facebook groups are also a really great resource. Just searching in Facebook groups for keywords of, the kind of books you do, the age category, the genre, maybe location-wise, and joining those groups. Those are great places to ask questions, to invite collaboration. Often people will post seeking collaboration in those groups. So definitely recommended. A critique group is a great resource for collaboration. If you're not already plugged into a critique group, I cannot stress enough how important this is. Even beyond publication, you need people in your corner. You need people who can give you a temperature check on your work and see if it's working or not. And there's so many great ways to find a critique group through some of the mediums we've mentioned, social media, Facebook groups, local community, local writing organizations. Those are all great ways to find a critique group. And finally, a great way to, build this community is reaching out to folks you'd like to get to know. So maybe authors you really admire their work, and you find a common ground and you email them. That doesn't always work, but sometimes I've been really surprised when I've maybe had a panel idea or something like that, and I've said, would you like to jump in on this? I've gotten to know some really awesome people that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise if I had stayed in my comfort zone. So if you're not sure where to start, I really recommend going on social media, maybe Instagram, and looking at the recommended feed of, recommended to follow. Or maybe you go on Facebook and go through author groups. And by looking through those things, make a list of a couple authors that maybe you'd like to know, maybe that you've got some commonality with their work. And you can brainstorm in that process. What would be a good way to break the ice? What is the common ground you might have? So maybe there's a local connection, maybe there's a thematic connection, maybe you want to offer a review exchange, maybe you're both debuting in the same year, maybe you got a proposal for a panel idea. Those are all great ways that you can kind of take initiative with reaching out to somebody to build your network. But before we get to collaborating, I just can't stress enough how critical it is to give. One of the biggest ways to network and sustain relationships, and especially in the writing world, is to give back, to invest in your writing community. This is a great way to show people you care, that you're in it for the long haul. It's a great way to build those connections of getting closer to writers and strengthen those connections so when you feel like you might need some help, that you feel comfortable reaching out to some of these folks. And it's give and take. Like a lot of these folks, we're all here because we love writing, right? And so you'd be surprised at how generous others will be back to you and how they'll have your back when you need it. So be generous. And there's a lot of ways you can do this, but a few suggestions are to review and shout out the books that you love. Even just taking a picture of a book cover and that you really love and posting it on social media. If your author friends have news or events or things that they want signal boosted or retweeted or shared, do that. Just take a couple seconds to share a post. It can really help an author. It can really make their day. If possible, see if you can go to events and meet and support authors you like, especially if they're local. We're all trying to get people to our events, and it means the world to see an audience there. There's nothing worse than going to a bookstore event and nobody is there. And you're like, I just drove all the way out here for this. But then when you go there and you see familiar faces, that makes your day. So that's a great way to make somebody else's day, is to be a part of that audience. A great thing to do to build your network and to give back is to volunteer for local writing conferences and writing organizations, supporting this infrastructure that's here in the writing community. That can also include things like doing online readings, workshops, gatherings for writers. If you do the AWP conference, that's a place you can volunteer as well. That's a great way to get to know people. So those are a few ideas of giving back. If you've got ideas of how you love to give back or how you love to be loved on in the writing community, feel free to comment below with some ideas. Okay, so once you've got this community through networking and giving back, how do you actually collaborate? This is kind of the million-dollar question today. And, if you've got ways that you like to do that as well, I highly encourage that you share those in the comments. And I have images for some things before. Here's some images of the debut groups I'm in, the MG and 2-3 and 2023 debuts. But okay, some ways that you can collaborate. One thing you can do is do a virtual tour together. So blog tours or virtual tours, it's something that publishers used to invest a lot in, and now it's more common that if you want to do it, you have to do it yourself or hire a tour company. But what it is really that you pick maybe a week or a month when your book's coming out, and you have a lineup where each day you have an interview on a different blog or a review or some sort of behind the scenes content, maybe a playlist, inspiration for writing, things like that. And for one of my books, I did this on my own, and it was exhausting, and it was so much writing, and I just was like, why did I do this? But then I got this idea to do a tour together with other authors, that we had this common kind of theme in our work, this common interest. And I said, hey, if you'd like to participate in this, email at least 5 places. Find places to email, blogs, maybe your connections, right? Maybe like one person had connections with a review site, and that I had connections with people that had reviewed my work in my last blog tour. And so we were able to use each other's strengths, use each other's connections, lighten the load sharing that. So instead of me emailing 50 bajillion places and doing a bunch of research, we were doing that together. So it made it easier to plan a tour. It also made it easier to share and more effective. So when the posts were coming out, instead of me just posting all about my book posts, I'm posting about everyone's books. And we had a giveaway as the culmination for the tour. And so then we're all sharing that giveaway. So instead of my book just being sent to my network, my book is being talked about in the network of all these other authors. And likewise, I'm getting to expose their work to my network. So this is a really great way to collaborate, and it's really flexible that, if you don't have a bunch of time or energy to devote to this, you do a small tour together. Maybe you just post on each other's blogs or something really, really light and easy. And you can make it more and more involved depending on your interest. Another example was a while ago, I did a tour with 12 debut authors. And so it was like each day one of us was highlighted. So then we weren't having to do a bunch of posts. We each just did one post. And it culminated in this giveaway where we each picked a tea that we felt represented the theme of our book, just something fun and goofy. And then the giveaway was that we were giving away all of our books and all of this tea. And so that's a great thing that we were all able to share in our networks of enter this giveaway. And, of course, when you're doing a giveaway, people aren't just, clicking a enter button. They're usually, there's something called Rafflecopter that a lot of places use, where there's different ways people can enter. So, you get an entry by following each of us on social media, or you get an entry for visiting this page, or for signing up for this newsletter, or things like that. So you're getting something valuable by people entering the giveaway. And then, of course, the people entering the giveaway are quite happy, especially if they win, because they're getting a chance to win some really great books. So this idea of a virtual tour, a blog tour, is a way you can collaborate. Another great way to collaborate is through making guest posts. So one example I'll share is that Hannah Sawyer, who's also a novel and verse Kidlit writer, we wrote an article on novels in verse and Kidlit, and it got accepted to the Writer's Chronicle, and it will be coming out in a future issue. And this idea came from just reading a back issue of the Writer's Chronicle, where I saw a similar thing where two YA authors wrote a collaborative post about mental health in YA. And I went, oh, I could do that. But I don't see much about novels in verse, especially in this kind of context. So I'd love to do that. And then I thought, who would be a great author to work with me that's also a novelist in verse? And I thought of Hannah Sawyer. And she said yes. So that's really great because especially if it's like a longer article, we wanted to talk about a lot of things in that, and that can feel a little daunting doing all on your own. So we were able to divvy up different sections that we focused on. We were able to edit each other's work. It made the load, again, a little more accessible, a little less daunting. Another type of collaborative post you can do, something our debut group did in our blog, was that we would do these lists each month based on different topics. So I did one on neurodivergent authors, and this was really easy to do. I was able to just post in our debut group Slack saying, hey, if you identify as neurodivergent, if your protagonist identifies as neurodivergent, let me know. Comment below with the title of your book. And so then the list made itself because then I had all these people comment, and then I was able to post that. And so that's a great, easy way to share about other people's work and about work that has a commonality with mine, because this was for Good Different, which is about an autistic girl. So I was thinking, how can I collaborate with fellow neurodivergent authors, and neurodivergent authors especially that are writing about neurodivergence? I mentioned this, but cannot stress enough how great it is to celebrate each other's books. This is a great way to collaborate. And I try to do this pretty organically. I tend to try to read books as soon as I can get them, or if there's an opportunity for a review copy, I read them. If I love them, a review often naturally pours out. And that was the case, especially for these two books, The Fire, the Water, and Maudie McGinn, and I Am Kavi. I just love them so much that a review came out, and then I went, wait, I can post that on Goodreads. I could post that on Amazon. That's helpful for the authors. But I bet there's other places I can post it too, and then they can get additional exposure. So I didn't do any additional work. I had already written the thing. But I was able to find outlets that also wanted to publish that so that they could get more exposure. Another way that you can celebrate each other's books is by creating easy graphics in something like Canva, or even just taking a picture of the cover and posting it on your social media. If it's books that you're excited to read, if they're books you really enjoyed, that's a great, easy way to provide content and to celebrate the books you love. One way that I really love to collaborate is through panels. I remember the first time I had to write a panel proposal. It was for an AWP conference, and I sat there for weeks and weeks staring at an empty Word document thinking, how on earth do I do this thing? Fast forward a few years, I have become quite experienced in the art of making abstract for a panel proposal. And I found I really enjoy doing that. I really enjoy writing those up. I really enjoy the events themselves and the conversations. So this is something I do quite a bit. And you'll see here, there's some graphics of some examples of different panel proposals I've done. And you'll notice for each of these, I tried to find a common thread. So I didn't just say, let's do a panel on, well, okay, you can do one on just Kidlit or middle grade. Those can sometimes be appropriate topics. But I try to be more specific when possible, especially if I'm in contexts where they probably want something a little more specific. So you'll notice for this video game conference, MagFest, my first novel, Post High School Reality Quest, is about a girl who thinks she's stuck in a video game. So I thought, okay, is there other authors that I know that did a similar thing where their books were about video games, or some way that we can connect this to this conference topic and talk about our work? And so I found a few other authors that I really love, Lynn Almengor, E.C. Myers, Luke Johnston, and we did a panel together talking about this topic about being gamers and being writers and how, games come up in our work. Another example is, as I said, Good Different is about an autistic girl, and I'm autistic. And so I really love the idea of having a panel of all autistic authors, and us just talking about what it's like to write autistic characters, what representation is like, maybe some unique struggles that we've hit. And so I put this panel proposal together, and we were able to do this virtually, which is great because we were all in different places in this continent. So that was a really great way for us to be able to do that together. So keep that in mind, that a panel proposal doesn't necessarily have to be in person. There are virtual options which may be more accessible. And then finally, here's an example of a panel where we were all just talking together and we said, hey, all of our protagonists are older, upper middle grade. All of our books deal with these kind of tough topics, or I think Heather Murphy Cap said chewy topics, where it's, complex and interesting. And we said, oh, we've got all this stuff in common. We should do events together. So, and in our conversation, we were talking about upper middle grade as a category. So we made this panel. And what was really great is Maria got this great idea of, oh, we're all four going to be there promoting our books. Would the bookstore be willing to give a discount if people bought all of our books? And, we asked the bookstore, because why not? And they said yes. So what was great is not only were we able to do this event together, we were able to provide this incentive for people to buy all of our books and celebrate all of our books. And so that was a win-win-win, that we were able to do this, and we were able to see people buying all of our books and having us sign all of our books. So panels can just be a really great way to have fun, interesting conversations, and also be able to, make sales. Collaborative giveaways is another great way that you can work together with other authors. So here's a couple examples of ones. This is one that I did with a friend where we both loved each other's work, and we had review copies of each other's work. So we did giveaways. So she did a giveaway of mine. I did a giveaway of hers. That was a great way to celebrate each other's work and push it to a new audience. Another easy way to do a giveaway is to do something simple, like a query critique. The query is very short. It's not a huge amount of work to do a critique, but it's a highly valuable service. All of y'all that have been in or are currently in the query trenches know how critical it is to have a good query. So something that our MG and 23 group did is one of our members made this beautiful graphic, and we said, okay, on this day, we'll all, post this. We'll be able to cross promote this giveaway, and we'll share it in our networks. And so it was a very easy thing to do to get some engagement and to, collaborate, because then we were able to boost each other's posts and things like that. But finally, one of my favorite ways to collaborate is to do a table together. Since I've mentioned my books, they have often kind of a nerd culture context. And so a lot of what I do is going to Comic-Cons, to video game conventions, and tabling at those. I quickly found that this can be really exhausting, especially if it's a 4-day con and you're tabling all day and you need to have bathroom breaks, you need to be able to get food. It can be really expensive. Tables are not cheap, and it seems like they're just getting more and more expensive. Travel can be not cheap. Sometimes you have to get a hotel, things like that. And so I think starting with trying to be more cost effective, I said, oh, let's try to collaborate, find a couple authors who might want to work with me at a table. And so they'll be a little cheaper. And then I found that this experience, it not only saved costs, but it really was more effective of promotion. I mentioned the idea of bragging about somebody else's book is going to be a lot more effective than just bragging about your own book. And so this is often what we'll do. You can see this table with me and the amazing YA and picture book author, Kathy McMillan. And, if somebody comes up to the table, maybe they start looking at my book. Kathy might go, oh, Post-High School Reality Quest. I loved that book. And she'll gush and, give them the pitch. And likewise, if somebody goes to Sword and Verse, I'd go, oh my gosh, I love Sword and Verse. If you love politics, linguistics, and kissing, you got to get this book. And so us gushing about each other's books often made people go, okay, I'm going to buy that. And there's some unique ways we could use each other's skill sets as well. So this is a picture from MagFest, which is a gaming convention. And so what I thought would be fun is that for each book, you'll see these little white cards, and I wrote comp titles in video games. So I was like, if you love the game Life is Strange, you'll love my book. If you love the Fire Emblem games, you'll love Kathy's book. And so at this convention, it was right after one of those Fire Emblem games came out. And so a lot of people, as soon as they heard that, they went, okay, I'm going to buy this book. And it was funny because Kathy, she's less in the video game world. She said, I don't know what you're doing, but that's working. So that was a fun way for us to play off our skill sets. But one of the best things that you can do in a table collaboration, or at least that we found, is this idea of a book bundle. So you'll see in the middle of the table, we had a bunch of our books together. And we give this price incentive that if you bought all of our books, you'll get a discounted price and maybe some other goodies too, like a free bag or a free book, something like that. And when you have people hyping each other's books up, when you've got this great price, you'd be surprised at how many people just go, I'm going to just take the whole bundle. And that's just such a win for everybody. The customer is happy. They got all these books for such a cheap price. We're happy because all our books sold. This is awesome. And we can celebrate with each other. So there's lots of different ways you can table. It obviously isn't just Comic-Cons or gaming events. There's also a lot of writer events and book fairs and things like that, or other topics that might be relevant to the content of your book. If you're finding those common grounds with other authors, that's a great thing to look at, is what kind of convention might have a common topic where we could share a table. So to close out, I'd like to just give a couple principles of advice for collaborating. So one is look for opportunities, look everywhere, especially in those Facebook groups or Discord groups. People are often posting about things that they have a need for collaboration. Maybe they need quotes for an article or something like that. So keep your eyes peeled of what might be possible. Keep your eyes peeled also for those commonalities. Who does stuff in common with what you do? Maybe with the topic of the book, your location, the age category. Finding those commonalities is a great way to break the ice when connecting with someone new. And the more specific you can get, the better. Make sure to ask questions. Go to people you have a personal relationship with. Have conversations. That upper middle grade panel happened from us just having a chat. And we decided, oh, this is something we'd love to do. So you never know where asking questions or having conversations might lead. When possible, see if you can come up with the idea for collaboration and take that initiative. When you've got an idea, you've done the worst of the work. It's much more effective to say, I've got this panel proposal would you like to jump in? Instead of, I love to collaborate. Then there's nothing concrete to grab onto. So if you can provide that concrete thing, and especially if you've done the work of like writing up a proposal or something like that, it makes it way easier for someone to jump in. That said, the worst they can do is say no, right? So if somebody does say no, or you've checked in and they don't respond, respect that. Go on and check in with somebody else. Give a few weeks to check in before you send emails, and don't press further. Respect that no or respect that silence. In this whole process, see when you can encourage and uplift others. This can be those writers you love, writers in your community, or even mentoring newer writers. Look for those opportunities. Put yourself out there by being in the community, reaching out. Something I'll do is if I see a conference, maybe I'll email them and ask if they need speakers, if they need things on specific topics. Emailing bookstores and saying, do you have any needs for events or ways to collaborate with schools? Again, you never know what might happen from those emails. Nothing will happen if you don't go out there. And finally, don't be afraid to try new things and be open to possibilities. So much of my book promotion journey has been trial and error. I did a lot of stuff that just did not work, but I wouldn't have known unless I tried it. And then there's other stuff where I just said, we'll see how this goes, and it ended up being fantastic, and I keep doing it. So try new things. Try to not be upset if it doesn't work the way you expect, and just persist. Do the next thing. That's all I've got for today, but I encourage you, if you want to know more about my work, about, look at some examples of events I'm doing, things like that, to get ideas, you could check out my website at megedenbooks.com. And I think that's it. Happy writing, happy promoting. Best of luck with everything.